चलो इधर 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 ये साइड सामने 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 excuse me
अरे साल नेट लगा क्या लगाया
लाइट लाइट लाइट
कौन चला
ए बिल्लू
most popular faces on television. She has had her experiences as a mother in award-winning book, The Modern Gurukul, My Experiments with Parenting, and she's penned that down and she's going to share all those experiences with you. Ladies and gentlemen, very, very, very beautiful Sonali Bendre.
अभी मैं तेरे ये शॉट के लिए बात नहीं डिले चुपचाप मेरा शॉट मेरा मैम वापस से एक बार
चुप ना एमबीए छपरेला
अरे एमबीए छपरेला गदर
You sir, thank you so much.
सॉरी अभी तो कर
ये सुना समझा इसमें टीसी क्यों नहीं आ रहा रे
रुक बताता हूँ
तेरा Z7 चलाया ना तूने
वो ऑटो फोकस हुआ
लौड़ा भेजो मैनुअल पे क्या बोलो नहीं खा
अरे चिल्ला मत रे यार ये सब गाली उली तेरे
क्या ऑडियो नहीं दिया क्या चल
अरे मैं लाइट चेंज
साले ये लोग क्या करते हैं चूती लोग
It's lovely that it encourages people to just come, and it's lovely to see that how many people actually love books. And books for me has always been my wonderful private world. As a child, I grew up. My father was in the government services, so every 2 years we were in a different city, new places. So my best friends have always been books. And in the process, one is always looking for new books, new topics, new things to read about. I remember the first time I heard of this wonderful author, Ashwin Sanghi, sitting here, was Chanakya's Chant. It was the first book that I read. And it was amazing. You know, I don't know, I hope I don't offend you when I say this, but you know, there's something you need to
Sonali, there's nothing that you can do that can possibly offend the average male.
You read Dan Brown's books and everything. For me, this was like very much an Indian. I would not like to say it just for the referencing. Such an Indian version of Dan Brown. There was this amazing take that was that he had taken Krishna Ki, the Rosable line. Amazing. So got hooked onto his books from the Chanakya Chant onwards, and since then I have been a fan. And so it's really amazing to be sitting here. And when he said that, could you launch the cover of my book? I said, well, why are we not launching the book so that I can take it back with me and read it? And then he's been giving these little tidbits where he just tells these 2 lines about it, and he's not really sharing what it is about, and it's driving me nuts because I can't, the suspense is killing me, and I'm like, what is it? Why can't you just come out with a book?
क्या कर रहा है अरे यार क्या क्या खराब कर रहा है
But we will still try to get a few things out of it. What is this book about? What has inspired you to write it?
चूतिया
First of all, thanks. I'm honored that you are a reader and a fan. Really, truly, it warms my heart. And thank you so much for the entire audience which is here today on account of this momentous book. I must tell you, as far as this particular title is concerned, Sonali, it was the intention was to try and explore. There are first of all, let's start with Kalachakra.
You know, Keepars of Kalachakra.
अबे इसका टीसी क्यों नहीं आ रहा थे छोटे
टीसी
दबाना उधर ऊपर लिखा हो
नहीं दबाया नहीं आ रहे थे
Imagine the intrigue that is already building up within you.
Absolutely.
What is this organization? What are you leading up to?
Absolutely.
What part of history are you going to demolish now? Because there are times when I feel, was the history I read right, or is he rewriting it, or is this the truth? So because the research that you do is so amazing that you actually start thinking, is that so close to truth? Maybe this was the truth. I mean, we would like to believe it because it becomes so exciting in this book.
No, I think for me the idea was that, first of all, let's start with Kalachakra itself. What does Kalachakra mean? Kal, time. Chakra, wheel. So it's the wheel of time. And actually, Kalachakra is a concept, a meditation concept that was taught by the Buddha to a great king whose name was Suchandra. And Suchandra was actually the king of a mystical land which we now know as Shambhala. And what was Suchandra after? He was after he wanted the ability to be able to attain the status of a bodhisattva without becoming a monk. So in other words, Buddha taught him a method where he could become a bodhisattva without becoming celibate, without giving up the worldly life. And so that is what Kalachakra is. In that sense, this book is a quest to attain that heavenly and pure land called Shambhala. So I think if Hemal is around, Hemal probably, if we were to show everyone the AV, do you have it queued or?
Can we see the AV?
So, yeah? Okay, so maybe, okay, lovely. So, the truth is that it's beyond the booze. I mean, frankly, I am one of those, I take interest in a lot of things. Typically, in the old days, people used to maintain journals. I have a modern take on that, which is that I, from the very beginning, have had an email account which no one else knows the ID of, because I use that email only to email myself. So I email myself almost every day, and so for example, all of these books, typically they follow a rather set timeline. Normally, depending on the book, it could be anywhere between 8 months to 1 year worth of research. Which means that, for example, I don't know the first thing about the Kalachakra, I would actually have to get into that. Similarly, when it came down to the Krishna key, it was sort of once again revisiting the Mahabharata, or reading the Arthashastra for Chanakya.
That's what I'm saying, just 8 months or a year is not really a lot of time.
Trust me, when you're going through it, it seems like a lot. So once I had that process completed, then I have the stirrings of an idea. And that's the time when I start plotting. So my plotting works, believe it or not, on Excel. Yeah, and it works on Excel spreadsheets. So typically, for example, let's take, for example, the Sialkot saga. The Sialkot saga is a story about two boys post 1947 after the partition, and how their lives pan out over the next 70 odd years. What people don't know, and one day I'm going to share this, is that if you were to look at an Excel sheet, the first column would indicate the year, 1947, 48, 49, 50. Then against each of those, the two characters, Arvind and Arbaz in this case, those characters, what were their ages in those years? What would they have been doing? Would they have been in school? Were they setting up a business? Were they in jail? Were they experiencing their first romance? What were they doing? Then I would superimpose on that what was happening in India at that time, politically, culturally, historically. And once I have that, then that gives me the final column that what happens in that chapter.
This is really a unique way. I've never heard anyone write like this.
It's
amazing.
It's a lot of sweat actually. People talk about inspiration. Inspiration is nonsense, it's perspiration. Yeah, of course. And once you've done that, then frankly the writing is almost effortless. I like to think of it almost, since this is a topic close to your heart, children's books. it's almost like a children's coloring book. The outlines, you're filling in the red, you're filling in the green. So that last 8-9 months is effortless because you
By the way,
already
I've lived with the characters for so long, you know everything about them.
Exactly.
And so a lot of times when you're making this Excel sheet, do you think a lot of your plot points and everything come out from there because of the time?
Absolutely. In fact, by the time that I'm done with the spreadsheet, I know every twist and turn in that story. And I know when it happens.
How much in love do you fall with your
तो कर नहीं
characters?
रहा खाली चल रहा है।
I think the only book in which I think I did things differently, and as a result of which I had less of a connect with my characters, was the Rosabal line. The Rosabal line was a book which, first of all, it was my first book, and it was a book where I had no clue of what I was doing. So with the Rosabal line, there are people who say that this was the most brilliant book Ashwin wrote. And then there are those who say, nonsense, he was on drugs. Now, so it's exceptionally different views on that book. And the truth is that I tied myself up into knots while writing it because it was a matter of chance. I happened to be in Kashmir. In Kashmir, there is a tomb in the center of Srinagar. It's called Rosabal, which is the tomb of the Prophet. There's a 14th century saint buried there. Nasiruddin is his name. Under his body lies a second body, which goes back to 124 AD, which is the origin of the tomb.
How do you find that out? It's just...
Well, you see, there are references to firmans. There are court orders which date back to 768, which refer to the fact that the tomb has stood there since 124. So you can pretty much take a calculated guess that the tomb has been there from that time. And outside the tomb, of course, is a pair of feet on a metallic plate, which has cross marks of a crucifixion. So very often there are people who say, we authors need to go out looking for stories, but the truth is that we don't go looking for stories. Usually the stories are looking for us. So the story finds you, and then either it clicks, and when it clicks, then you say, I need to explore this further.
So just for our benefit, when you saw that tomb there, what was it that went on in your mind at that point of time when you said?
So I was like, wow. What sort of a story is this?
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with that story for the next 1 year. I ended up reading tons and tons of books, not just on the tomb, but on alternative theories that had been propounded by various non-fiction authors. For example, someone had written, a Russian explorer called Nicholas Rotovich had visited the monastery in Ladakh. And yes, it's there. And he found a scroll which talked about Isa, a boy who came from Palestine at the age of 13. Now that fits in beautifully with the so-called lost years of Jesus Christ. So all of that, I wanted to connect the dots. And so I was utterly obsessed with that story. My wife was fed up with me. She said that, listen, the only conversation, if at all we have a conversation, it's about that tomb. And it's really getting on my nerves. So she said, you have to find a way to get that kira out of your system.
So write it fast so that it's out of your system.
So I
did it get out of your system after you wrote it?
But even at that time, 40 pages was a research document where I connected all the dots. And after I was done, I was very proud of myself. I gave it to her. And I said, so at night, she read it. Next morning, I said, so what did you think? She said, congratulations. So I was damn pleased with myself. I said, wow, that, So I said, you really liked it. So she says, well, congratulations because you discovered the cure for insomnia. Because within about, like a few pages, I was out for the count.
Are you serious?
So she said, no one's going to read this. You have to make this into a
What
story.
does she have to say now?
I think, frankly, when it comes down to my wife, I tell you, I always say that she's the needle. Because at any given point of time, given my figure, when I start floating,
Punctures the balloon.
she punctures the balloon. So, and it's always good to be able to sort of have your feet firmly on the
We
ground.
all do that to a certain extent. It's a good thing to do sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did the character get out of your system after you wrote the book, or are you still attached to it? Which
No,
is your favorite?
those-
Which is your favorite character?
My favorite book, I would say, is The Rosabal. But character-wise,
The first baby syndrome?
absolutely. It's first love. You never forget your first love. So that book is my first love. But at the end of the day, I would say in terms of characters, I would say the ones I created in the Sialkot saga were probably the best ones.
Okay.
Where I could actually feel that, I empathized, I sympathized with them. So, and of course, Chanakya's chant, Ganga Sagar Mishra, was again one of my favorites. So,
You fall in love with all your characters. You've done
Pretty much.
their
हाँ, तो ये
babies,
बाहर
giving
खड़ा है।
birth to them.
pretty much.
So that whole process. So yes, I get what your wife is feeling, and I know why she is the leader then, because imagine what she's going through. It's a year and a half
हसन भाई
of
ऑडियो
this
मिला क्या?
obsession
And-
with every book.
While these books are going on in parallel, there are other books coming along the way. So my James Patterson books happen in between all of this.
Okay.
My 13 Steps books happen in between all of this. So at any given point of time, I'm
So
multitasking.
do you have a routine when you say that, okay, these are the hours that I'm going to write? Are you disciplined like that, or are you?
Well, pretty much, because otherwise you can't really turn out. It's been 10 years and I've written 10 books.
It's amazing.
I like to joke that most people have a 9 to 5 job. I have a 5 to 9 job, which means I'm up at 5. And typically I'm done with my writing by 8:30 or 9.
In the morning?
In the morning.
Yeah, thank God.
And my parents are sitting in the front row, Sonali, right here. So typically I have to time myself, because by 9 o'clock is when I go and have a cup of tea with them. So between
Do you
5...
discuss it with them? Are they here? There's
No,
something
no. Because then my morning ritual will be totally finished once and for all. So it's easier just to keep it as, because while I'm writing, at that point of time there are conflicting thoughts coming in and I don't even know as to how that book is going to turn out.
And what is it that you're going to keep eventually? Because how much rewriting happens with you?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
How much of rewriting happens with you?
I've always maintained that I'm not a writer but a rewriter.
But most writers that I've met say that.
So I'm a rewriter because this book has been through 7 rewrites. 7 rewrites. And either my editor had some inputs in it or my publisher wanted certain things.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How is your relationship with your editor?
Oh, I must tell you, my relation with my editor is superb. And, she's one of those people who has been with me from the first book, The Rosabal Line. And in fact, she came on board on account of the fact that she used to be with my publisher. And even after she left my publisher, she continues to edit my books. So the first edit is always done by her. And somehow or the other, what happens is the process of editing is such that over a period of time, you build up a familiarity.
Absolutely.
And in fact, nowadays when she does edits, I don't even realize that it's her voice. It's almost like she's taken on my voice.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So initially, any fights, any
Oh
arguments?
yeah, initially the biggest fights were on the Rosabal Line. Because the Rosabal Line was a book which was so utterly confusing to the average reader. Luckily, the ones who were utterly confused didn't want to admit that they were utterly confused. So they said, oh, what a wonderful book. So, as a result of which, the book worked.
I don't agree with that, but anyway.
So the maximum number of fights and arguments were related to that.
And then since then you ironed out the differences. And
Yeah.
your voice became one, and so it's been a great relationship since then. I would say.
Absolutely. And plus she's understood, she is Kolkata based.
Okay.
And
So the distance helps.
one is distance, but the other part of it also, I must tell you, is that my own inspiration to a very great extent started with Kolkata, and I must tell you this, and for the audience which is here, I must tell them this little incident, that I was at an event, and in the afternoon, I had a little time to kill, so I went with the driver to look at a temple. I walked into the temple, and I realized that the deity that was being worshipped was actually Amitabh Bachchan. There was a throne along with a portrait of Amitabh Bachchan. So
I did not know this.
I was wondering whether this was real, but once I saw the pujari and I saw people, actually praying, I realized this was real. So I walked outside and there was a little boy selling puja ka saman, agarbattis and what have you. And from him I picked up a little prayer book known as the Amitabh Chalisa. Now, at that moment, I must tell you, I thought to myself that supposing you were to be knocked down right now and you die and you take birth 1,000 years later, by which time this whole cult of Amitabh worship has caught on. And now there isn't one temple but 100,000 temples. And someone taps me on the shoulder and says, do you think it was possible that Amitabh could have been a real man? Now that's the question which fascinates all of us, right? That could Ram have been there? Did he walk the earth? Was Krishna around? Was he a historical character? Or is everything made up? That's where the delicious conspiracy theory comes in. That what if? And that's what drives me. And I think my editor understands that.
What did it lead to? Amitabh Bachchan temple.
So in fact, it led to that Krishna, which was basically the notion that that what in case in the present day you had actually a 10th incarnation of Vishnu. What would it be?
Do you really believe? What is your thought on it? Do you think that it was just mythology, or did these people actually walk the earth?
I think it was Lewis who said that a myth is a lie that contains a truth. And that's pretty much what it is. That there's a kernel of truth in that myth. So you dig deep enough and you will find that kernel of truth. But if you think that the entire thing is an absolute truth, then I don't agree. So to give you an example, my take on the Mahabharata, you had a work which was 25,000 verses called the Jaya. It became 50,000 verses by the time it became Bharat, and it became 100,000 verses by the time it was the Mahabharata. You mean to tell me that all the various rishis and sages didn't add their own fiction to it?
That's human nature.
That's human nature.
To it.
Similarly, you take the Ramayana, you have 300 versions of the Ramayana, and each of those versions gives you a very different truth. So for example, the Tulsi Ramayana treats Ram as God. Valmiki Ramayana treats him as a man. You take, for example, the Adbhut Ramayana and the Anand Ramayana, these two in particular from the south. One of them has Sita becoming Durga and killing Ravan. And the other one has Ravan performing the rituals for Ram before battle. So there are 300 versions. Which one will you say is the truth? That's the great thing. That's the great thing about our mythology, that there is your truth, my truth, everyone's truth.
So what is the truth of Kalachakra?
You have to wait.
But you just give us a hint at least.
Let me
I
give
think
you
we all deserve it, don't you agree? We deserve it.
I would say that the notion, to my mind, is that there are many things in Vedanta which our seers, which our rishis, which our munis were looking into. The only difference was that they didn't have laboratories and they had no way of experimenting. But they had a much better developed intuitive sense. So either it's experimentation and practical knowledge, or it's intuitive. knowledge. And both are leading us in the same direction. And that is pretty much the core of Keepars of Kalachakra. I can see someone has come to stand here and tell us something. So,
Yeah, could we, I'm sure the audience wants to ask some questions. Could we have some questions?
Sure. Okay, we can take only 3 questions. So,
Did I take too long? Sorry, I had to come to time. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you.
perfect, we don't have media interaction, so we
but
can
let's not cap it at 2, please. It's not fair to the audience, at least 4. Yeah.
Super, you say it, we do it. 4 then. Sir, can we get the mic here, please?
Whoever has the mic has the floor. Unless there's no mic. There is.
Excellent rendition. Ashwin, once again grateful. Putting into Keepars and Kalachakra. You're referring to Chinese and Buddhist, while Shiva Sutras talk about Shiva as Kal.
Absolutely.
And Bhrigu Rishi has written whole Bhrigu Samhita on time-based planetary predictions and actions.
Absolutely.
Based on your karmic credit center.
Of course.
So your thought, why this we are transferring, like Om, we say, Dhyana becomes Chana or Chen in China.
Yes.
Then goes to Japan, it becomes Zen, and we feel proud, oh, Zen meditation, oh, Dhyan, Chan, Jing.
Yes.
But it is Dhyan, it's from here.
Absolutely.
And there are histories saying that Ashoka has gone there, Buddha has gone there, and why do we discredit our rishis' creations to these gentlemen? No disregard to anybody, we respect Chinese also, but
Not at all.
Thank
But
you.
I must tell you, to my mind, talking about Kalachakra, in fact, once you read the book, which I'm assuming that at some point of time when it's out you will realize that I'm talking about the fact that what we now call Tibetan Buddhism and what we now call Tantric Buddhism actually comes from Shiv Tantra. So a lot of those concepts, take for example this cover, you can see the background. It's a mandala, it's a very clear mandala. Where does that mandala come from? It comes from the Sri Yantra, which is very much there as a part of Yantra, Mantra, Tantra. So,
42 minutes after
the aim is not to in any way put down or discredit what we have, but to show what has been the meaning. That is really the effort.
Thank you so much. The next question.
Good evening, Ashwin. I wanted to ask you about the book cover.
Yes.
What is that unique looking creature?
First time, well, as I mentioned, the entire what is called Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism actually comes from Shiv Tantra. The initial inspiration was Tantric, Shiv Tantric practice. And of course, in that you have Shiv and you have Shakti. Shiva, Shakti, because Shiva is not complete without Shakti. Shakti is not complete without Shiva. And so, in similar vein, in Buddhism, you have the concept of Kalachakra and Vishwamata. They are two independent deities, but when they come together, then the world is balanced. I think it was some great author who once said that it's only when evil exists that we know good, and it's only when good exists that we know evil. And so then you can't understand darkness without light, you can't understand evil without good, you can't understand positive without negative. So it is that combination of Shiv Shakti which is very clearly depicted.
Please insert.